The August heat draped itself over South Briar like a heavy tarp, sticky, breathless, and impatient. On Ashland Avenue, the crosswalk signal blinked red against a sky of chalky blue. Cars idled at the light, radios murmuring about the weekend game. A street vendor turned bacon on a griddle that hissed like rain. Ordinary, almost sleepy. Darius Cole waited on the curb outside Morales Pharmacy, a paper bag of bandages and cough drops in one hand, his other hand tapping an old scar at his jawline, a nervous habit he'd picked up overseas. He wore a gray t-shirt, clean but faded, and carried himself with a quiet posture that made people step aside without quite knowing why. The summer breeze tugged at the edge of the receipt peeking from the bag. A police cruiser nosed up to the curb a little too fast, tires kissing the gutter. Officer Brent Kincaid popped his door and unfolded from the driver's seat like a man owed something. The block didn't go silent because it was South Briar, and South Briar didn't do silence, but it did shift. Heads turned. Radios dialed down. A mother tightened her hold on a stroller. "Hey, you!" Kincaid barked, chin jutting at Darius. "Hands where I can see 'em." Darius didn't move at first. He blinked once, slow, then raised his hands, the pharmacy bag rustling. "Afternoon, officer. Something wrong?" "Loitering. Blocking pedestrian traffic, and I don't like the look of you," the vendor muttered. "He's buying bandages, man," but his voice barely carried. Darius kept his tone level, the kind of steady that came from 100 checkpoints and 1,000 hard moments. "Just waiting to cross." Kincaid took 2 heavy steps forward and planted himself too close, so close Darius could smell mint gum overlaid with coffee. The cop's lip curled. "Don't get smart with me." Darius shifted the bag to his raised hand and said nothing. Saying less was sometimes safer. Saying less had kept friends alive in places that never made the news. "What's in the bag?" Kincaid asked. "Receipts and bandages. You can see the—" The punch came without a warning word. Just a sharp grunt from Kincaid, a blur of shoulder, and then knuckles cracking against Darius's cheekbone. The paper bag burst like a startled bird, bandages spinning across the sidewalk. A child yelped. Someone dropped a soda. A chorus of gasps erupted, followed by the insect click of phones being whipped up and pointed. Darius rocked back a step, hand instinctively coming up, but he didn't swing. He blinked away stars, tasted metal, reset his feet. The scar at his jawline pulsed under his fingers. Across the years, instructors' voices threaded through his head. "Breathe, assess, control the space, control yourself." Kincaid wasn't finished. He grabbed a fistful of Darius's shirt. "You think you can stare me down? You think—" Darius laid his palm over the cop's wrist, not squeezing, not twisting, just placing. Firm, deliberate. He made his voice low. "Let go of me, officer." The vendor stepped forward, then thought better of it. "Yo, that's too much!" he called, louder this time. A few people shouted. A woman near the bus stop yelled, "I'm filming!" Kincaid's grip tightened. "You threatening me?" He shoved. Darius's shoulder hit the pharmacy window with a dull thud. The glass rattled but held. Something in the block shifted again, this time not in sound but in posture. A tall woman in scrubs slipped her phone to her ear and murmured a name. The vendor's hand hovered over the handle of the grease lid as if it were a shield. A boy on a BMX bike balanced on one pedal, eyes wide. Darius took another measured breath. "I'm not threatening you," he said. "I'm telling you to stop." Kincaid cocked his fist again, anger making his face small. "You don't tell me anything." From farther up the block, a horn double-tapped, a crisp beep-beep with nothing casual in it. Head swiveled. A matte green SUV rolled to a stop behind the cruiser, followed by a tan pickup with a toolbox across the bed and 2 sedans that looked civilian until the doors opened. They didn't pile out. They deployed. 4 men and 1 woman stepped into the heat with the unhurried precision of people who had drilled this movement in dust and rain and darkness. No uniforms. Civvies, all of them. But their haircuts were clean, their boots practical, and their eyes did that thing. Sweeping corners, checking elevations, mapping exits. The woman in front, compact and coiled like a middleweight, had a thin scar under her left eye. She raised an open hand, 2 fingers tapping her temple as if saying eyes up to the others. "Darius?" she called, voice calm and clear. "You good?" Kincaid half turned, confusion crowding out fury. "Who are—" "Ma'am, step back!" another officer shouted from the cruiser, but his voice wavered because the air had changed and everyone felt it. Darius let go of Kincaid's wrist. He straightened his shirt. Blood ticked warm at the edge of his mouth. He didn't smile. He didn't move toward them either. He just said, to the woman with the scar, "Hey, Rivera." Sergeant Lila Rivera nodded once, like that was all she needed. His voice, his eyes, his stance. She didn't look at Kincaid when she spoke again. She looked at Darius like they were at a training range, not a sidewalk. "Cole 1, check," she said over her shoulder. "2, said a bearded man, drifting left where he could see the alley mouth. 3, said the smallest of them, already clocking windows, balconies, reflective surfaces. 4, said a broad-shouldered guy in a ball cap, placing himself between the crowd and the brewing mess without pushing anyone. 5, said the last, whose bookish glasses didn't hide the way his weight settled over the balls of his feet. They formed a loose ring, not aggressive, not even touching the cops, just present, deterrence in denim. "Step away from my suspect," Kincaid snapped, recovering his bark. His cheeks had turned the dangerous shade of red that matched a poor decision. "All of you, back up, now!" Rivera finally turned to him. She didn't lift her chin. She didn't reach for anything. She just let her hands hang open at her sides and let her eyes say the rest. "Officer," she said, polite as a coffee order, "I'm Sergeant Lila Rivera, U.S. Army. We're on personal time. We saw an assault." Kincaid scoffed. "Assault? He resisted?" "On camera," said the woman from the bus stop, angling her phone screen so the whole sidewalk could see the punch that had made the bag explode. The chorus of phones grew. Angles changed. Someone was already live. The vendor, who had remained very still for the last 30 seconds, inhaled and said, "Man, this just got federal." Darius wiped his lip with the back of his hand and said to Kincaid, soft enough that only those closest heard, "This can end quiet." "Quiet?" Kincaid spat. "You think your little club scares me?" Rivera didn't look away. "We're not here to scare you." Her tone had the same steadiness Darius carried, the same sand-polished calm. "We're here to make sure nobody else gets hurt." 2 more squad cars turned onto Ashland, lights off but unmistakable. The second officer from the first cruiser, a younger man with eyes that still looked like they made room for doubt, stepped between Kincaid and Darius, palms outward. "Let's slow this down," he said, breath slightly fast. "Let's all slow—" "You're out of your lane, Parker," Kincaid snapped. Rivera's people didn't flinch. They widened the ring by inches, creating space where there had been none, giving the crowd a corridor to breathe and the officer named Parker an exit he could take without losing his face. "Sergeant," Darius said, never raising his voice. "I'm good." "Copy," Rivera said. To the group, almost conversational. "Condition is yellow. Maintain." The word maintain traveled the block like a bomb. Sirens approached now, not in panic but in response, and the senior sergeant from the arriving unit stepped out with the weariness of a man who had put out too many fires started by the same spark. He took in the scene: phones, faces, a ripped paper bag, a cheek already swelling, the 5 strangers whose posture read "not today," and his shoulders settled. "Kincaid," he said, not loudly but with the gravity of an internal report. "Inside voice, hands where we can see them." Kincaid's jaw worked. "Sarge." "Inside voice," the senior repeated, and then to Darius, "Sir, are you injured? Do you need medical attention?" Darius breathed once more, deep and even. He looked at the faces, Rivera's level gaze, Parker's tight worry, the vendor's hopeful tilt, the mother with the stroller holding her phone like a life preserver, and felt the familiar click of a plan that didn't involve fists or clever lines. "I'll let the medics take a look," he said. "And I want to make a statement." Rivera exhaled, almost imperceptibly. Her unit eased. Not relaxed, never relaxed, but eased. Kincaid glared holes through the air, but for the first time his eyes flicked away from Darius to the ring of soldiers who weren't in uniform and weren't moving and weren't going anywhere until the heat broke. The world had gotten very small around him. The street vendor lifted the grease lid and said to nobody and everybody, "Y'all smell that? That's trouble cooling off." On Ashland Avenue, under a sky of chalky blue, the city took a breath it didn't know it was holding, and the story stopped being about one punch. It became about who stood still when it mattered. The blue and red flicker of squad cars washed the street in nervous color. The medics crouched beside Darius on the curb, tilting his chin, shining a penlight into his eye, pressing gentle fingers along his cheekbone. Swelling, maybe a fracture, one murmured. We'll get you to county for scans. Darius waved them off. I've had worse. His voice was steady, but edged with the kind of fatigue no ice pack could treat. Sergeant Lila Rivera crouched beside him, resting her forearms on her knees. Worse doesn't mean you ignore it, she said softly. Take the ride. Show them you respect the process even when they don't. Darius met her eyes, then gave a single nod. Fine, I'll go. Across the street, Officer Kincaid paced like a caged bull, wrists clenched behind his back only because the senior sergeant had barked the order. His partner Parker looked pale and silent, caught between duty and disbelief. The senior sergeant strode over, his voice clipped. Kincaid, you're relieved. Hand over your badge and sidearm. Kincaid froze. What? He resisted, you saw? I saw enough. Cameras saw more. Badge and gun, now! The crowd murmured approval, phone still high. When Kincaid finally unclipped his holster and slapped metal into the sergeant's palm, the relief that rippled down the block was almost physical. At County Hospital, Darius sat on a gurney in a curtained alcove. The fluorescent light hummed, sterile and merciless. His cheek was taped with an ice pack, his knuckles scuffed from hitting glass when Kincaid shoved him. He stared at the floor until Amanda Torres, the reporter, appeared with her camera lowered. Mr. Cole, she said carefully, I know you're tired, but the city needs to hear your side before anyone rewrites it. He looked up, brow furrowed. You want a statement? Amanda nodded. The footage is already viral, but people need to know who you are, not just what happened. Darius hesitated, then exhaled slowly. You'll run it uncut? My words, not edited for clicks? Uncut, Amanda promised. He adjusted the ice pack, squared his shoulders, and spoke. My name is Darius Cole. I served 12 years in the United States Army, including 2 tours in Afghanistan. I came home with medals I don't brag about and scars I don't hide. Today, I was punched by a police officer while buying medicine for my mother. I didn't fight back because I've fought enough. I didn't raise my voice because quiet strength speaks louder. I only ask one thing. Judge me not by my skin, not by where I stand, but by what I've given to this country. And ask yourselves why giving isn't always enough to be treated with respect. Amanda's hands trembled slightly on the mic. When he finished, she whispered, That's the story. Within an hour, the clip hit national feeds. Hashtags exploded. #quiet strength, #justice. For Darius, #respect first. News anchors replayed the punch on a loop, cutting to Darius's calm words from the hospital bed. Commentators argued about accountability, about veterans, about whether the system had rotted too far. In living rooms across Brookdale, neighbors whispered, That could have been my brother, my son, me. Back at the precinct, tension simmered. Officers huddled in corners, whispering about Kincaid, about the videos, about the mayor's likely phone call. Lieutenant Harris slammed a folder on his desk. We've got a crisis. One of our own turned the city against us with one punch. Parker, pale and shaken, finally spoke up. He didn't just turn the city. He crossed a line. I was there. Cole didn't resist. He didn't do anything wrong. The room fell silent. Harris's glare cut sharp. You realize what you're saying? I'm saying the truth, Parker muttered, then sat back, the weight of silence pressing down. By evening, Brookdale Square filled with people. Veterans marched at the front, medals gleaming. Families followed, holding signs. Respect our heroes, and quiet strength. Loud hate. Darius watched from the hospital window as the march snaked past, his chest tightening. He hadn't asked for this, but the city had chosen him as its symbol. Rivera sat in a chair at his bedside, arms crossed. You didn't ask for it, she said, reading his thoughts. Neither did Rosa Parks. Neither did a lot of people whose names live longer than they expected. History doesn't wait for volunteers. Darius rubbed his jaw, wincing. I just wanted to buy medicine. Rivera's gaze softened. And you walked out with a movement. Meanwhile, Kincaid stormed into his apartment, slamming the door hard enough to rattle frames. His television blared his name, his face, his punch replayed in humiliating slow motion. Talk shows called him reckless, dangerous, a disgrace to the badge. He hurled a beer bottle against the wall, shards skittering across the floor. He made me look weak, he snarled to the empty room. Him and his little army buddies. They think this is over? It's not over. The words hung heavy, promises of a storm still brewing. That night, Darius finally closed his eyes in the hospital bed, his mother's hand resting on his arm. Outside, the city hummed with chants and headlights, voices demanding change. Quiet strength had lit a fuse, and the fire was only beginning to spread. Morning sunlight spilled across Brookdale like a spotlight, revealing every crack. The city hadn't slept. Too many screens glowed overnight, replaying the clip of Officer Brent Kincaid's fist colliding with Darius Cole's face. Coffee shops buzzed with whispered outrage. Billboards carried hastily printed posters of Darius's hospital bed statement. The words "quiet strength" scrolled across news tickers as if it were an anthem. Inside City Hall, the mayor sat grim-faced at a long oak table, flanked by advisors. His phone vibrated every 30 seconds. National news, veterans groups, even the governor's office. He pinched the bridge of his nose. One officer just turned this city into a case study in everything wrong with policing. We can't contain it. We have to respond. Councilwoman Ortiz leaned forward. Respond? Sir, this isn't just about policy. People are marching, veterans are leading them. If we look like we're circling wagons, we'll lose the entire city. The mayor sighed. Then what do we do? Ortiz's answer was crisp. We stand with Cole, publicly, now. At Brookdale County Hospital, Darius shifted restlessly on the bed. His cheekbone ached under the bandages, but it was the restless hum of activity outside that pressed harder on his nerves. Nurses whispered his name as they passed. Strangers left flowers at the reception desk. His mother, Evelyn, sat by the window, knitting with hands that shook less than his. You've started something, son, she said without looking up. I didn't start anything, Darius muttered. He threw the first punch. That's not what I mean. Evelyn lifted her eyes, warm but steady. You showed people a choice. You didn't meet hate with hate. That's rarer than medals these days. Darius turned his head, staring at the IV pole. I didn't want to be anyone's symbol. Symbols don't ask permission, she said softly. Meanwhile, in the precinct, Officer Parker sat at his desk, fingers hovering above the keyboard of an incident report. Every word he typed felt like a betrayal, yet every omission felt like a lie. He thought of Darius's calm voice, the circle of soldiers, the way the crowd had gasped. Finally, Parker typed, Mr. Cole complied. No aggressive action observed before Officer Kincaid initiated physical contact. He hit save, knowing the ripples would reach him soon enough. Across the bullpen, whispers crawled. Some officers muttered about betrayal, others about accountability. The department felt split down the middle, fault lines deepening under every glance. In a quiet office across town, Sergeant Lila Rivera reviewed footage again on her laptop. Her unit had closed ranks around Darius instinctively. Now the whole country was asking who they were. She rubbed her temple, debating whether to release a statement. Her phone buzzed, an unknown number with a Washington area code. She answered cautiously. Sergeant Rivera, this is Colonel Dawson from the Pentagon. We've been briefed. We want to commend your composure yesterday. Rivera stiffened. With respect, sir, I wasn't looking for commendation. We were protecting a brother. That's exactly why it matters, Dawson said. The public sees discipline and loyalty. We see an opportunity to remind people that service doesn't end when the uniform comes off. Stay close to Cole. He's going to need steady voices. Rivera exhaled. Understood, sir. That evening, Amanda Torres set up a camera outside the hospital. Her piece opened live. Brookdale isn't just a city tonight, it's a mirror. In that mirror, we see a decorated veteran struck without cause, a police officer disgraced, and a community asking one question: who do we honor? The clip cut to Darius's hospital statement, then to Rivera's soldiers standing silently outside the courthouse, their presence like an invisible guardrail. Amanda's final words were sharp. Brookdale's answer may decide how the nation remembers this week, not as violence, but as the moment respect demanded its due. Across town, Kincaid sat in the dim of his apartment, blinds drawn. His face glowed blue from the television replaying his downfall. His phone was silent except for voicemails he refused to check. They'll forget, he muttered to himself. News moves fast, they'll forget. But then the screen shifted to a montage of Darius's service photos. Uniform crisp, medals pinned, smile quiet but certain. The anchor said the words Kincaid dreaded. Decorated war hero. Kincaid hurled the remote, shattering plastic against the wall. Hero? He humiliated me, made me look like the villain. His breath came ragged, fists clenching. This isn't over. Night fell heavy over Brookdale, but the city pulsed with unusual unity. Porch lights glowed in rows as a silent vigil. Murals bloomed overnight, spray paint and brushes spelling respect first across brick walls. Veterans in fatigue stood quietly at intersections, not blocking, just present. In his hospital bed, Darius stared at the ceiling, restless. Rivera sat nearby, scrolling headlines on her phone. "They're calling you a hero," she said. "I didn't save anyone," Darius replied. Rivera tucked her phone away. Sometimes the hero isn't the one who saves. Sometimes it's the one who refuses to break. Darius turned his head, finally meeting her eyes. "What if I don't want that role?" Rivera's answer was quiet, almost a whisper. "Then carry it anyway, because the city needs it more than you do." By midnight, Chance rose outside the hospital window, steady, rhythmic. "Quiet strength, quiet strength." Darius closed his eyes, the sound pressing into his bones. The storm wasn't passing, it was growing, and this time he realized there was no stepping back. By Tuesday morning, Brookdale was no longer just a city, it was a headline. National anchors spoke the name Darius Cole with solemn weight, splicing in grainy combat footage and still photos of him in desert fatigues. Veterans groups posted statements, civil rights leaders booked flights, and Brookdale Square filled with candles that burned long past midnight. Inside City Hall, the mayor's conference room throbbed with tension. Reporters crowded the lobby downstairs, demanding answers. Councilwoman Ortiz stood near the window, her voice sharp. "We can't waffle anymore. Half the country is watching. If we protect Kincaid, we lose legitimacy. If we back Cole, we risk alienating half the precinct." The mayor tapped his pen against the table. "And what happens if the department fractures? We can't afford officers walking off the job." Ortiz leaned forward, her words clipped. "We can't afford citizens walking off faith in us. Choose." The mayor rubbed his temple, the choice pressing like a vice. "Fine, draft the statement, we back Cole." At Brookdale County Hospital, Darius shifted on the bed, uncomfortable in the spotlight. His cheekbone was a dull throb, but it was the steady buzz of phones that wore on him. His service photo had been everywhere, magazines, hashtags, even a mural sketched in chalk outside the hospital. Sergeant Rivera stepped in with her unit trailing loosely behind, dressed in jeans and boots. "Cole," she greeted, voice even. "You've got a problem." He raised an eyebrow. "Only one?" Rivera held up her phone, scrolling headlines. "They've made you a saint. They've made him a devil. The city's split and both sides want you to say something to tip it." Darius exhaled. "I'm not a politician. I'm just a man who got punched." Rivera folded her arms. "You're more than that now, whether you want it or not. The question is, do you carry it with dignity or let others carry it for you?" Darius rubbed his temple, the weight pressing heavier than the bandages. Across town, Officer Parker sat in the precinct, writing his supplemental report. His hands trembled as he typed. Mr. Cole complied at every stage. Officer Kincaid initiated unprovoked physical assault. When he finished, he slid it across his desk toward Lieutenant Harris. The lieutenant scanned it, jaw tightening. "You're making enemies," he warned. "I'm telling the truth," Parker replied. His voice was quiet but firm. Harris sighed. "Truth doesn't always keep you safe." Meanwhile, Brent Kincaid sat in a dim motel room, suspended and furious. His badge and gun were gone, his name plastered across every network. He downed another beer, muttering, "Cole stole my career, my respect, my city." On the screen, footage replayed of Darius in uniform, medals flashing under desert sun. The Chiron read, "Decorated war hero assaulted by cop." Kincaid hurled the bottle at the wall, shards scattering. His breathing came sharp and ragged. "This isn't over," he hissed. "He won't stand taller than me." That night, Amanda Torres broadcast live from Brookdale Square. Thousands filled the plaza, candles glowing, signs raised high. Respect first, quiet strength, justice for Darius. Amanda's voice carried with gravity. What began as a single punch has become a national reckoning. Brookdale asks not just what happened, but who we are. The camera panned across veterans saluting, children chanting, and mothers holding photos of their sons. The city had drawn a line, and it was clear which side most had chosen. Inside the hospital room, the chants drifted through the window. Darius sat upright, listening. His mother touched his hand gently. "They're waiting for you, son." I'm not a leader, he murmured. She squeezed his fingers. Leaders rarely start out thinking they are. They just refuse to look away when it matters. Rivera leaned against the wall, watching him. You want this to end? Then own it. If not for you, then for everyone out there who sees themselves in you. Darius stared at the glowing skyline outside. He remembered the dust of Kandahar, the quiet weight of fallen brothers, the medals pinned without ceremony. None of that had prepared him for this, and yet somehow it felt like the same battle, only the terrain had changed. By midnight, the mayor stepped before cameras in a prepared statement. Brookdale stands with Mr. Cole. We honor his service, his dignity, and his quiet strength. Officer Kincaid's actions were unacceptable. Accountability will follow. The city erupted. Applause thundered in the square, chants doubled in volume, and phones lit the night with headlines. Amanda closed her live segment with a single line. The city has chosen. Now the nation watches what comes next. In the hospital bed, Darius lowered his head into his hands. The weight of cheers outside pressed heavier than Kincaid's fist ever had. Rivera's words echoed in his mind. Carry it with dignity, or let others carry it for you. For the first time, he whispered to himself, maybe it's time. The storm wasn't over. It was gathering. And Darius Cole had just been pushed to its center. By Wednesday morning, Brookdale was no longer a local headline. National networks ran rolling coverage. Darius Cole's hospital statement looped on breakfast TV while commentators debated accountability and veterans' dignity. Editorial pages carried his face, captioned with words like respect and quiet strength. In a beige office 3 states away, a Pentagon communications officer slid a folder across a polished table. Sir, the Brookdale case is gaining traction. Veterans associations are demanding an official response. Colonel Dawson scanned the photos of Darius in uniform, his gaze narrowing. He's one of ours. We don't let the world forget that. He picked up the phone. Get me Brookdale. Back at County Hospital, Darius sat upright on his bed, the steady beep of monitors keeping rhythm with his thoughts. He hadn't slept well. Every time his eyes closed, the punch replayed. Then the circle of soldiers, then the roar of the crowd outside. Rivera walked in, tossing a folded newspaper onto his tray. Front page, again. Darius didn't look. What now? She arched a brow. Pentagon's called me twice. They want to coordinate. They're sending a rep down. Darius frowned. For what? I'm not looking to be paraded around like some poster. Rivera's voice softened. It's not about parade. It's about message. You've become more than one man's story, and they know it. Later that afternoon, Amanda Torres stood under the hot glare of camera lights outside the hospital. Her hair was tied back, her voice crisp as she faced the lens. Tonight, Brookdale braces for a visit from Washington officials. Sources tell us the Department of Defense sees Sergeant Cole not just as a victim of violence, but as a symbol of resilience. The question remains, will Cole embrace this spotlight or resist it? Behind her, chants rose again. Quiet strength, respect first. Signs waved in the crowd, their cardboard edges catching the sun. Inside a dim motel, Brent Kincaid sat hunched over, his jaw clenched. His suspension had stripped him of badge, gun, and paycheck. His TV blared commentary that painted him as a disgrace. Beer cans littered the table. On screen, a commentator said, Cole's calm dignity contrasts sharply with Kincaid's aggression. The nation is asking, who deserves respect? Kincaid's fist slammed the table, rattling the cans. Respect? Him? He made me a laughingstock. His voice cracked, venom seeping through. This isn't finished. I'll show them who's weak. That evening, the mayor hosted a private meeting at City Hall. Council members, veterans, and clergy sat around the table, the tension palpable. Councilwoman Ortiz addressed the room. Brookdale has chosen to side with Cole, but now the federal government is watching. We must ensure accountability doesn't stop at suspension. The people want charges. The mayor leaned back, weary. Charges will inflame the department. Ortiz countered sharply. Failing to charge inflames the city and the nation. The silence that followed made the choice clear. Back at the hospital, Darius's mother entered the room carrying a tray of home-cooked food. She set it down, ignoring the nurse's protests. You can't heal on ice packs and headlines, Evelyn said firmly. Darius cracked a tired smile. Yes, ma'am. She sat beside him, knitting needles poking from her bag. Her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. Son, I've buried neighbors who came back in flag-draped coffins. I've watched this country honor you in uniform and doubt you out of it. What you said in that hospital bed, it gave people something to hold on to. Don't let fear steal that." Darius swallowed hard, her words heavier than any metal. By nightfall, Brookdale Square pulsed again with protest. This time, veterans led the chants. They carried flags folded under their arms, medals pinned to civilian jackets. Some saluted, others held signs, "Respect our heroes. Quiet strength is power." Amanda's live broadcast cut through the noise. "The line has been drawn. Brookdale's people will not let this fade." Tomorrow, Washington arrives. In his hospital room, the chants filtered through the open window. Rivera sat in the corner scrolling her phone while Darius stared at the ceiling. "They're calling me a hero," he murmured. "You are one," Rivera said simply. Darius shook his head. "Heroes save people. I didn't save anyone." Rivera leaned forward, her tone steady. "Sometimes the hero is the one who refuses to break when someone tries to shatter them. You didn't swing, you didn't scream, you stood. That's what they see." Darius's chest tightened. He had stood on foreign sand, holding a line with bullets flying, but this felt different. This felt heavier. Near midnight, his phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number flashed. He answered cautiously. "Private Cole?" The voice was crisp, authoritative. "This is Colonel Dawson, Department of Defense. I want you to know we've seen what happened. You carried yourself with discipline and dignity. You remind the nation what service looks like. Tomorrow, I'll stand beside you in Brookdale." Darius gripped the phone tighter, silent for a moment. "Sir," he said finally, "I never asked for this." Dawson's reply was calm, unwavering. "That's why you're the right man for it." When the call ended, Darius sat in the dark, the chant still echoing outside. Rivera watched him quietly, understanding the weight settling on his shoulders. The storm was no longer just Brookdale's. It was the nation's. And in the center, whether he wanted it or not, stood Darius Cole. The next morning, Brookdale pulsed like a city holding its breath. Helicopters buzzed overhead, reporters crowded sidewalks, and the courthouse steps gleamed under a blanket of cameras. The defense secretary's office had confirmed a Pentagon representative would arrive at noon, and the air thrummed with anticipation. At County Hospital, Darius Cole sat on the edge of his bed, dressed in simple jeans and a plain shirt. His cheek was still swollen, but the bandages had been replaced with a subtle strip of tape. He looked like any man recovering from a fight, until the crowd outside reminded him he wasn't. Sergeant Rivera stood at the window, scanning the swelling protest outside. Veterans in uniform mixed with families holding signs, chants rising in rhythmic bursts. "Respect first, quiet strength." "You don't have to speak," Rivera said, turning toward him, "but you should stand beside them. Silence speaks too." Darius rubbed his temples. "I just wanted to buy medicine. Now the Pentagon's flying people here like it's a war zone." Rivera's gaze was firm but not unkind. "Sometimes the battle finds you." Across town, Brent Kincaid paced in his dim motel room, eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. His television flickered with footage of Brookdale Square filling with protesters. The crawl at the bottom of the screen read, "Pentagon to address assault on veteran." Kincaid muttered under his breath, "They've turned him into a saint, and me into the devil." His phone buzzed with messages he didn't check. Suspension had isolated him, stripped him of allies. Even the precinct chatter had grown cold. Only Parker, that rookie, had spoken out loud, and not in Kincaid's favor. Kincaid slammed a fist against the dresser. "This isn't over, not by a long shot." By noon, Brookdale Square throbbed with bodies. News vans lined the streets, satellite dishes sprouting like iron trees. The mayor stood stiffly on the platform, Councilwoman Ortiz at his side, both clearly aware that every word spoken would echo nationwide. When Colonel Dawson emerged from a black SUV, the square erupted. His uniform was sharp, his ribbons glinting under the sun. He walked with deliberate authority, pausing to salute veterans in the crowd. His presence radiated command, not of politics, but of service. Amanda Torres narrated live for her network. The Pentagon's involvement marks a turning point. What began with a punch in a small city has grown into a national statement on respect and accountability. Inside the hospital, Darius sat by the window, watching Dawson approach the podium on a screen. His mother touched his arm gently. "They're waiting for you, son, but only you decide when to step out." Rivera checked her watch. "If you're going, we leave now." Darius inhaled, then stood. "Let's go." The crowd outside roared when he appeared flanked by Rivera and two soldiers from her unit. Phones lifted like a field of stars, chants doubling in strength. Darius kept his chin level, every step deliberate, every movement quieter than the roar surrounding him. On stage, Dawson turned as Darius approached. He saluted sharply. Darius, though out of uniform, returned the gesture with crisp precision. The moment froze the square. Two soldiers, generations apart, binding the crowd with one act of respect. Dawson faced the microphones. This nation owes its veterans more than medals and folded flags. It owes them dignity. Private Cole carried himself with the same discipline here at home as he did on foreign soil. That is what service looks like. That is what strength is. The crowd erupted. Some wept. Others saluted. Darius stepped forward reluctantly. He adjusted the mic, his voice steady but soft. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want it. But if my standing here reminds even one person that respect should be given before it's demanded, then maybe it's worth it. The square fell silent, then exploded into applause. Across town in his motel room, Kincaid hurled his remote against the wall as he watched the broadcast. They cheer him like he's a king, he spat. But without that uniform, he's just another... He cut himself off, jaw tight. Rage simmered. His career was gone, his name in ruins, while Cole was celebrated. The bitterness ate at him like acid. Kincaid muttered, "If they won't remember me for the badge, they'll remember me for what comes next." His eyes flicked to the drawer where his old service pistol lay, hidden but not forgotten. That night, Brookdale glowed under candlelight vigils. Chants softened into songs. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in years shared food on sidewalks. The mural downtown now stretched across an entire block, bold letters spelling, "Respect First," under the painted outline of Darius standing tall. Amanda closed her live report with a final line. Tonight, Brookdale feels less divided, not because the wound is healed, but because one man refused to answer hate with hate, and that refusal has changed everything. In his hospital room, Darius watched from the window as lanterns floated skyward, rising like prayers. His mother's words whispered back to him, "Don't let fear steal this." For the first time, he allowed himself a small smile. The storm hadn't passed, but he no longer stood alone in it. The morning after Colonel Dawson's speech, Brookdale hummed with an energy that felt halfway between relief and vigilance. Coffee shops overflowed with conversations about dignity, respect, and accountability. On the streets, posters of Darius Cole's face hung in shop windows beside chalk drawings scrawled by children. Quiet strength. But in a dim motel on the city's outskirts, Brent Kincaid's world had shrunk to four walls and the bitter taste of humiliation. He hadn't shaved in days. Empty bottles littered the carpet. The television replayed Dawson's salute to Darius on a loop, each broadcast gnawing at Kincaid's pride. He muttered to himself, voice fraying at the edges. He's not better than me. I wore the badge, I earned it, and they cheered him like some savior. When the commentator described Darius as the embodiment of true service, Kincaid hurled a chair at the screen, cracking the glass. He sat in the silence, chest heaving, eyes burning. "If they won't give me respect," he whispered, "I'll take it back." At Brookdale County Hospital, Darius sat across from Amanda Torres, who balanced her recorder on the edge of the table. Rivera stood near the door, arms crossed, as if guarding more than the room. Amanda's questions were careful, respectful. "Darius, when you stood next to Colonel Dawson yesterday, the crowd saw unity. But what did you feel?" Darius rubbed his bandaged cheek, his eyes drifting to the window where protesters still gathered. "I felt unprepared. I served my country. I did my tours. But I never thought standing still in my own city would feel heavier than standing under fire overseas." Amanda leaned in. "And yet you stood." He met her gaze. "Because sometimes the only way to win is not to swing. If my calm is what people needed, then I'll give them that." Rivera's eyes softened, though she said nothing. Meanwhile, the mayor's office buzzed with urgency. Councilwoman Ortiz slammed a folder on the table. "We can't stall anymore. Kincaid must face charges. The footage, the witnesses, even his partner. There's no wiggle room." The mayor rubbed his jaw. "The department's already fractured. Indicting him could push the old guard into open rebellion." "Let them," Ortiz snapped. "Brookdale citizens have already chosen their side. We either follow their lead or lose them completely." The mayor exhaled heavily, finally nodding. "File the paperwork. We move forward." That evening, Amanda went live again from Brookdale Square. Lanterns swayed in the breeze, chants echoing through the streets. "Respect first, justice now." Veterans in uniform saluted as she spoke into the camera. Tonight, sources confirm that Officer Brent Kincaid may soon face formal charges for the assault on Darius Cole. For many, this is more than accountability. It is a test of whether Brookdale can match words with action. Her sign-off was clear. Justice may not erase the punch, but it can honor the man who refused to throw one back. Across town, Kincaid sat in his car outside the precinct, engine off, watching through the windshield as officers came and went. His jaw worked furiously, teeth grinding. The rumors had reached him: charges, hearings, maybe even jail time. His grip tightened on the steering wheel until his knuckles blanched. "They're turning on me," he muttered. "The brass, the rookies, even the ones I bled with, all for him." His eyes flicked to the glove compartment. Inside, the cold weight of his old service pistol seemed to hum like a dark promise, but when he popped the compartment open, his hands trembled. For all his anger, something deep inside whispered that one reckless move could end him. He slammed it shut, chest heaving, sweat beating at his temple. "This isn't finished," he hissed. "Not yet." At the hospital, Evelyn Cole entered her son's room carrying a worn photo album. She opened it to a page of Darius in uniform, his smile younger, his eyes brighter. "You carried burdens then," she said softly, "and you carry them now. But don't forget, you're still my son. Not just a symbol. Not just a story. A man." Darius looked down at the photo, throat tight. "I don't know if I can be both." Evelyn placed her hand over his. "You don't have to choose, you just have to keep standing." Rivera, leaning against the wall, nodded quietly. By nightfall, Brookdale Square filled once more. The chants turned into songs, low, steady, almost like prayers. Amanda narrated from the crowd. "The city isn't just protesting anymore, it's healing." But even as Brookdale takes steps forward, questions remain about the man who threw the punch and whether justice will be enough to keep him from striking again. Her words hung in the air as lanterns floated skyward. Back in his motel room, Kincaid watched one drift past his window. For a moment, his hardened expression cracked. He whispered, almost pleading, "What about me? Where's my second chance?" But the silence that answered told him what the city already had. Respect had moved on, and Kincaid's bitterness, festering in the dark, promised the storm wasn't over. Thursday morning cracked open with sirens in the distance and helicopters circling above Brookdale. For days the city had marched, chanted, and sung, but today the air was sharper. Everyone knew it was coming. The question was when. Amanda Torres was live outside the courthouse, her microphone steady as she spoke to the camera. "We can now confirm that formal charges have been filed against suspended Officer Brent Kincaid. The indictment includes assault, abuse of authority, and conduct unbecoming of law enforcement. The district attorney will present the case in court next week." Behind her, the crowd erupted into cheers. Signs waved high. "Accountability equals respect, and no badge above the law." Amanda's tone was firm. For Brookdale, this isn't just about one officer. It's about whether justice can match the pain of a single punch. Inside County Hospital, Darius Cole sat in a chair by the window, the news broadcast playing softly on the TV. He rubbed his jaw absent-mindedly where the swelling had faded, his mind miles away. Rivera entered carrying 2 coffees. She handed him one and nodded toward the screen. "It's official, they're charging him." Darius took a slow sip, letting the bitter warmth steady him. "Doesn't change what happened." "No," Rivera agreed, "but it changes what comes next." He turned toward her. "And what's that?" Rivera shrugged lightly. "Courtrooms, testimony, more headlines, but also accountability. Maybe even healing." Darius shook his head. "Healing doesn't come from papers. It comes from people choosing better." Rivera studied him, her respect for his quiet clarity deepening. Meanwhile, in his motel room, Kincaid sat at the edge of his unmade bed, staring at the papers slid under his door earlier that morning. The official notice of indictment glared back at him like a scarlet letter. His face twisted with rage. "Assault, abuse of authority, conduct unbecoming. They're burying me alive." He picked up the paper and tore it into shreds, letting them scatter across the stained carpet. "All for him, for Cole, for some decorated soldier who just happened to be in the wrong place." His voice dropped to a growl. "They think this ends in a courtroom. They have no idea." At City Hall, the mayor addressed a packed press room. Flashes popped as he read from the statement. Brookdale's commitment to accountability is firm. Officer Brent Kincaid will face charges in a court of law. Our city stands with veterans, with justice, and with every citizen who deserves dignity. Councilwoman Ortiz stood beside him, arms folded, eyes sharp. When reporters shouted questions, she leaned toward the microphones. This isn't about politics, it's about principle. And the principle is simple. No one stands above respect. Her words rippled across the city, quickly trending online. By evening, Brookdale Square swelled again with marchers. This time, however, the mood was different. There was celebration mixed into the chants, hope threaded through the signs. Drums beat steady rhythms, children painted murals, and veterans saluted as lanterns rose into the night sky. Amanda wove through the crowd, recording live segments. She spoke into the lens with urgency. Tonight feels less like protest and more like a vigil for change. But beneath the celebration, there is tension. Everyone knows Kincaid has not been seen in public since his suspension. And some worry silence is more dangerous than noise. Back at the hospital, Evelyn Cole sat beside her son, knitting needles clicking softly. She looked up at him, her eyes tender. The city's marching for you, Darius. But they're also marching for themselves. You gave them a voice when you refused to swing back. Darius leaned back, his voice low. I didn't give them anything. I just stood still. Evelyn smiled faintly. Sometimes standing still is the loudest thing you can do. Rivera checked her phone and looked at him seriously. They want you at the square tomorrow. Just a few words. Nothing fancy. The crowd needs to see you're real, that you're not just a headline. Darius hesitated, the weight of her words heavy. He had spoken in combat briefings, in barracks, but never to thousands. Still, when he pictured the faces chanting outside, he knew silence wouldn't hold forever. I'll think about it, he said finally. In the shadows of Brookdale, Kincaid drove slowly through the streets in an old unmarked sedan. He kept the brim of his cap low, his eyes darting from block to block. Murals of Darius stared back at him from walls and bus stops, each one a reminder of his disgrace. He gripped the wheel tighter, the car swerving slightly. They paint him like a saint while they spit on my name. But they'll see. They'll all see. His phone buzzed in the cup holder. Another message from his union rep, urging him to stay quiet and prepare for court. He ignored it, his jaw clenching harder. Kincaid muttered into the dark, "Court isn't where this ends. Not for me, not for him." Back in his hospital room, Darius watched the lanterns float into the night sky, their glow reflecting in the window. Rivera stood behind him, silent but steady. For the first time since the punch, Darius felt the stirrings of resolve. He hadn't asked for this role, but it was his now. The city wasn't waiting for someone else to lead, they had chosen him, whether he liked it or not. He whispered into the night, "If I have to carry it, I'll carry it with dignity." And outside, the chants rose louder, as if answering him. Friday dawned with a strange kind of electricity in Brookdale. News vans clogged the streets, satellite dishes sprouting like steel flowers. Reporters lined sidewalks, their microphones ready. The word had spread overnight. Darius Cole would step into Brookdale Square and speak. Inside the hospital, Darius dressed in a plain button-down shirt and jeans. His cheek was still bruised, but he carried himself with the calm weight of someone used to wearing armor you couldn't see. Rivera adjusted the collar for him, her expression unreadable. "You don't need to say much," she told him. "They just need to hear your voice." Evelyn entered with a scarf in hand. She draped it gently around her son's shoulders. "For strength," she whispered. Darius smiled faintly. "You two act like I'm going to war." Rivera met his gaze evenly. "In a way, you are." By mid-morning, Brookdale Square overflowed. Veterans in uniform stood shoulder to shoulder at the front, their medals glinting in the sun. Families carried signs, children perched on their parents' shoulders. The chant pulsed steady. "Respect first, quiet strength." Amanda Torres stood near the stage, her cameraman steady at her side. "This is it," she said live on air. "The moment Brookdale has been waiting for. For the first time since the assault, Darius Cole will address the city." The crowd is silent now, waiting for one man to speak. At the edge of the stage, Darius paused, inhaling slowly. Rivera gave him a nod. Evelyn squeezed his hand, and then he stepped forward. The roar that greeted him was deafening. Cheers, applause, chants all blending into one tidal wave. He raised a hand and slowly, the square fell silent. His voice carried steady, deeper than the microphones. My name is Darius Cole. Some of you know me as a soldier. Others know me as the man who took a punch. A ripple of laughter, soft but tense, moved through the crowd. He continued, I didn't ask for this. I didn't stand on that street to make a statement. I was just buying medicine for my mother. But when that punch landed, it wasn't just my face it hit. It hit every person who's ever been told they were less. Every veteran who served and came home to doubt instead of dignity. Every family who worries their son or daughter won't be seen for who they are, but for what someone assumes. The square was hushed, not even a chant breaking the silence. Darius's eyes scanned the crowd, settling on a boy holding a sign almost too big for him. He pointed gently. That young man doesn't deserve to grow up wondering if respect will be given or withheld based on something he can't change. None of us do. He paused, his voice softening. I could have fought back. God knows I've been trained to. But sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to break, refuse to swing, refuse to meet hate with hate. The crowd erupted in applause, chants swelling again. Darius lifted his hand once more, steadying them. This isn't about me, it's about us, about what kind of city we want Brookdale to be. Do we want to be a place where strength means who shouts loudest, or a place where strength means who stands tallest in silence? The chants shifted, echoing his words. Stand tall, stand tall. Darius's voice grew firmer. I'm not here to be a hero. I'm here to remind us that dignity belongs to everyone. If I have to carry that message, I'll carry it, but I can't carry it alone. The roar that followed shook the square. Veterans saluted, families raised fists, and Amanda's voice cracked as she spoke into the camera. History is being written here in Brookdale tonight. Across town, Brent Kincaid watched from his motel room, his face twisted with rage. The broadcast blared Darius's words, each one driving deeper into his pride. He clenched his fists so tight his knuckles bled. They cheer him like he's a saint, he spat. Like I'm the villain. He kicked over a chair, pacing furiously. They've taken everything from me. My badge, my name, my respect. And he stands there like he's untouchable. His eyes flicked again to the drawer where his pistol lay. He opened it, staring at the cold steel inside. For a long moment, the only sound was his ragged breathing. Then he slammed it shut, trembling. Not yet, he muttered. But soon. Back in the square, lanterns floated skyward, glowing against the darkening sky. Rivera stood behind Darius, watching the crowd chant his name, her expression a mix of pride and concern. You did good, she said quietly. Darius exhaled, shoulders heavy. I just spoke the truth. Evelyn touched his arm, her eyes glistening. And that's what they needed most. As lanterns rose higher, Amanda signed off her live broadcast. Brookdale has heard its soldier. The question now, can it live up to his words? The square roared again, but Darius's gaze drifted upward, following the lanterns. He knew the night wasn't an ending. It was only another line drawn in the sand. The morning after Darius's speech, Brookdale felt transformed. Newspapers carried headlines like Quiet Strength Speaks and Brookdale Soldier Calls for Dignity. Clips of his words dominated television and social media. Even networks far from Brookdale replayed the moment when he raised his hand and calmed thousands with nothing but a steady gaze. At City Hall, the mayor's office buzzed with nervous energy. Advisors crowded around a long oak table while Councilwoman Ortiz stood at the head, arms folded. The speech has shifted everything, she said sharply. Cole isn't just a victim anymore. He's a leader. If we don't act quickly, charges, reforms, visible accountability, we'll look like we're dragging our feet. The mayor tapped a pen against the desk, tension in every movement. And if we move too fast, the department fractures. Ortiz leaned forward, her eyes fierce. Then let it. Better a fractured department than a fractured city. Meanwhile, in his hospital room, Darius sat with Rivera reviewing headlines on her phone. His words were everywhere. You realize you've gone viral, right? Rivera said. Half the country is quoting you. Darius sighed, rubbing his temple. I didn't want to become anyone's rallying cry. I just wanted people to see we don't need to answer hate with hate. Rivera gave him a long look. That's exactly why you became one. Evelyn entered carrying a tray of homemade soup, her eyes bright with pride. They needed to hear you, son. They needed a steady voice, and you gave it to them. Darius stirred the soup absent-mindedly. And what happens when I can't live up to their expectations? His mother's answer was quiet but firm. You already did. by standing still when it mattered most. Across town, Brent Kincaid sat in his motel room, watching replay after replay of Darius's speech. The applause, the chants, the lanterns floating into the sky, each image seared into him like a brand. "They worship him," Kincaid muttered. His voice cracked, rage thickening his words. "They've erased me, made me the villain." His hands trembled as he reached for the pistol in the drawer. He held it for a long moment, the weight heavy in his palm, sweat beaded at his temple. His reflection in the cracked television screen stared back, broken, hollow, consumed. He set the weapon down abruptly, chest heaving. "Not yet, but soon they'll remember my name." That afternoon, Amanda Torres hosted a live segment from Brookdale Square. Behind her, crowds still gathered, some singing, others painting new murals across brick walls. "Brookdale is still resonating from last night's speech," Amanda said. "But tensions remain high. Sources confirm Officer Brent Kincaid has not been seen publicly, and his silence has only deepened concerns. For many here, accountability in court is essential, but fear lingers that his anger won't stay contained." The camera panned across the crowd. Children chalking "respect first" onto pavement, veterans saluting quietly, and parents holding their kids close. Inside the precinct, Officer Parker finalized his testimony for the district attorney. His colleagues eyed him warily, some with admiration, others with resentment. Lieutenant Harris stopped by his desk, voice low. "You sure about this, Parker? Once you testify, there's no going back. You'll have enemies in this department." Parker's jaw set. "Truth has to matter. If it doesn't, the badge means nothing." Harris studied him for a moment before nodding. "Then stand tall, but watch your back." That evening, Brookdale Square filled again. This time it wasn't protest, it was solidarity. Families brought food, musicians played gentle songs, and candles glowed like stars across the plaza. Amanda's broadcast captured the moment. "It feels less like resistance tonight and more like a city healing together." But beneath the peace lies unease, because one man, Officer Kincaid, remains out of sight, his intentions unknown. Back in the hospital, Rivera stood by the window as Darius prepared for discharge. "You ready to step back into the world?" she asked. Darius shrugged. "I've never left it. Just feels like the world stepped into me." Rivera smirked faintly. "That's one way to put it." Evelyn clasped her son's hand. "When you walk out those doors, remember, you're not alone. The city is with you, your brothers are with you, and your mother's prayers are with you." Darius squeezed her hand back. "Then I'll stand tall, for them, for all of us." Across town, Kincaid sat in his car outside Brookdale Square, engine idling, watching the glow of lanterns rise into the night sky. He gripped the steering wheel, his face lit by the flicker of passing candles. "They cheer him like he saved the world," he muttered. His eyes narrowed, his chest heaving. "But they'll see, they'll all see." His hand drifted toward the glove compartment again. This time, he didn't slam it shut. He let it rest there, fingers tapping the handle, as if weighing the cost of a final choice. Back in the square, the chants swelled again. "Respect first, quiet strength." Lanterns floated upward, painting the night sky with flickering hope. Amanda closed her live broadcast with solemn words. "Brookdale stands together tonight, but in the shadows, one man's bitterness still lingers. The question is, will justice in court be enough to keep it from breaking into violence?" The camera panned upward to the glowing lanterns, and somewhere beyond the light, Kincaid's shadow waited. Saturday morning broke with sunlight flooding Brookdale, but the city didn't wake gently. Reporters had camped outside County Hospital all night, waiting for the moment Darius Cole would be discharged. Helicopters hovered above, and a wall of protesters stood ready, their chants already echoing off glass windows. "Respect first! Stand tall!" Inside, Darius sat at the edge of his bed, lacing his boots with quiet precision. The bruises had faded to yellow and purple, but the weight in his chest felt heavier than combat gear. Evelyn adjusted the scarf she had given him, her hands trembling slightly. "Are you ready, son?" she asked. Darius looked at her, his calm eyes belying the storm inside. "I don't think anyone is ever ready for this much attention, but I can't hide in here forever." Sergeant Rivera leaned against the doorframe, her expression half guard, half proud. "The city doesn't want a Saint, Cole. They just want to see you're real." He stood, inhaling deeply. "Then let's give them real." Outside, the hospital doors slid open and the crowd roared as Darius stepped into the sunlight. Cameras flashed, microphones stretched forward, and chants swelled like thunder. Rivera and two soldiers flanked him, guiding him through the chaos. Amanda Torres's live broadcast captured every second. And here he is, Darius Cole, the man who refused to swing back, now stepping into Brookdale Square for the first time since his speech. Listen to this crowd. The chants shook the ground. Quiet strength. Respect first. Darius raised his hand, not to silence them, but to acknowledge them. The roar softened into a hum of respect, as if the city itself exhaled. At City Hall, the mayor and councilwoman Ortiz watched the broadcast. Ortiz's voice was sharp. Look at that. He's already leading without trying. We need to be prepared. This isn't just a local matter anymore. Washington is watching, and so is the world. The mayor rubbed his temple. Then we had better make sure Brookdale doesn't stumble. One wrong move, and this city ignites. Across town, Brent Kincaid sat in his parked car, engine idling, watching the live stream on his cracked phone screen. Darius's calm presence, the chants of thousands, the way Amanda Torres framed him as a symbol, it all boiled inside Kincaid like poison. They worship him, he muttered, voice tight. They erased me. My badge, my years, my authority, gone because of him. His hand drifted again to the glove compartment. This time he opened it. The pistol lay there, gleaming faintly in the morning light. He picked it up, weighing it in his palm, his breath quickening. They'll remember me, he whispered. They'll have to. But even as he gripped the weapon, his hand trembled. He shoved it back into the compartment, slamming it shut. Rage simmered, unresolved, waiting for release. Back in Brookdale Square, Darius stepped onto the small platform erected overnight. Rivera stood a few feet back, scanning the crowd for threats, while Evelyn clasped her hands tightly, tears glistening in her eyes. Darius took the microphone. His voice was steady, quiet enough that people leaned in to hear. I'm not a politician. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I'm just a man who took a punch on a street I call home. A ripple of murmurs swept the square. He continued. But when that punch landed, it landed on all of us. On every veteran who came home to doubt instead of gratitude. On every family who's been told respect must be earned twice over. On every child who wonders if dignity is promised to them or not. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. I can't promise to solve every problem. I can't fix the whole system. But I can stand tall. And if standing tall reminds us that strength doesn't have to roar, that respect doesn't have to be begged for, then maybe this is worth it. The chants ignited again, louder than ever. Stand tall! Stand tall! Amanda narrated live, her voice trembling slightly. Brookdale Square has never been louder. Darius Cole has just spoken words that are already echoing across the nation. This isn't just a story of violence anymore, it's a story of dignity. Veterans saluted, children waved signs, families wept openly, and above it all, lanterns floated skyward, glowing in the morning light like quiet prayers. Meanwhile, inside his car, Kincaid punched the steering wheel, the horn blaring in frustration. They think this is over, he snarled. They think they can just cheer and move on. He leaned back in his seat, chest heaving, eyes cold. But this isn't over. Not until they remember me. Not until he falls. The sound of the crowd carried faintly even to where he sat, as if mocking him. Kincaid closed his eyes, whispering to himself. Soon. Back in the square, Darius stepped down from the platform, the crowd still roaring his name. Rivera leaned close, her voice low. You realize you've just made yourself the voice of the city, right? Darius exhaled, the weight pressing heavier than ever. I didn't ask for it. Rivera's gaze was steady. Leaders rarely do. Evelyn slipped her arm through her son's, guiding him gently. You stood tall, Darius, that's all anyone needed. As lanterns rose higher into the sky, Amanda closed her broadcast with words that summed up the moment. Brookdale has found its voice. The question now is whether the city and the country will follow it. The cheers roared, but in the shadows, one man's bitterness sharpened into something far more dangerous. By Sunday morning, Brookdale was still buzzing from Darius Cole's appearance in the square. National news outlets replayed his words on a loop. Hashtags like #StandTall and #QuietStrength trended worldwide. Editorials praised his composure, while commentators debated what his rise meant for policing, veterans, and accountability. In the hospital, now preparing for full discharge, Darius sat across from Amanda Torres for a final interview. Her camera crew adjusted lights, the hum of equipment filling the room. You've become a symbol, Amanda said carefully. Does that scare you? Darius chuckled softly, though there was no humor in it. A symbol doesn't eat, doesn't sleep, doesn't feel pain. I'm not a symbol. I'm a man who happened to be standing in the wrong place at the wrong time. But if people see something in that, if they draw strength from it, then maybe it's worth carrying. Amanda leaned in. And what about Officer Kincaid? The name brought a shadow to the room. Darius's jaw tightened. That's for the courts to decide. My fight isn't with one man. It's with the idea that dignity can be stripped with a punch. That's bigger than him. Rivera, standing guard in the corner, caught Amanda's eye with a silent signal. Enough. Amanda shut off the recorder. Meanwhile, in his motel room, Kincaid's descent deepened. His phone buzzed relentlessly. Missed calls from his union rep, texts from old colleagues telling him to stay calm. He ignored them all. His attention was fixed on a news clip playing on his cracked laptop screen. There was Darius again, standing in the square, the crowd chanting his name. Veterans saluting. Lanterns rising. Kincaid's grip tightened on the edge of the desk until his knuckles whitened. He's everywhere. My face is the villain, his the hero. They've taken everything. My badge, my name, my life. He reached into the drawer and pulled out the pistol. He stared at it, his breathing shallow, his eyes glassy. If they won't give me respect, I'll take it. I'll take it from him. From all of them. His reflection in the darkened TV screen showed a man unraveling. Eyes wild, jaw clenched, desperation painted across every line. At City Hall, Councilwoman Ortiz pushed for urgency. We can't let Kincaid's silence lull us. He's unstable, unpredictable. If he lashes out, Brookdale won't just have a scandal. It'll have blood on its hands. The mayor looked worn, his tie loosened, eyes rimmed with fatigue. We're already indicting him. What more do you want? Ortiz slammed her palm on the table. Protection. For Darius, for his family, for the city. Don't wait until it's too late. Her words carried weight, but resources were thin. Brookdale's police department was fractured, many officers refusing to stand guard against one of their own. The tension was palpable. Brotherhood of the badge pulling against duty to the public. That evening, Darius walked with Rivera through Brookdale Square. The murals had grown larger, some covering entire buildings now. One depicted him standing silently with the words, "Respect first," painted above in bold strokes. Another showed lanterns rising, each flame carrying the phrase, "Quiet strength." Rivera studied the paintings. You realize they've made you part of the city's skin now. Darius shook his head. I didn't ask for this. Rivera's reply was steady. Leaders don't get to ask. They just become. As they walked, strangers approached, veterans saluting, parents thanking him, children pressing handmade signs into his hands. Each gesture added weight to his shoulders. He accepted them quietly, his face unreadable, his mind racing. Meanwhile, Kincaid parked his car 2 blocks away, engine idling. He watched from the shadows as the square glowed with candles and music. His eyes locked on Darius, who stood in the crowd, surrounded by Rivera and soldiers. Kincaid's grip on the steering wheel was so tight it left grooves in the leather. There he is, the saint, the hero, while I rot. His hand drifted to the passenger seat, where the pistol lay hidden beneath a crumpled jacket. The weight of it pulled at him, every heartbeat louder than the last. But then he saw something that made him hesitate. A little girl tugging on Darius's sleeve, handing him a flower. Darius knelt, accepted it gently, and patted her shoulder. The crowd erupted in cheers. Kincaid's breath caught. The flower, the smile, the cheers, it was too much. He slammed the car into gear and sped away, tires screeching against asphalt. Later that night, Amanda filed her report from the square. Tonight, Brookdale feels united. But unity does not erase danger. Officer Brent Kincaid's silence remains the city's darkest shadow. And though Cole's message is spreading across the nation, so too is the question, how far will one man's bitterness go before it breaks? Her cameraman panned upward, capturing lanterns drifting into the sky like fragile hopes. At the motel, Kincaid sat on the floor, back against the wall, the pistol in his lap. His breathing was ragged, his mind racing. He whispered to himself, a mantra that twisted with rage. They'll remember me. They'll remember me. The city didn't know it yet, but the storm gathering in Kincaid's mind was about to crash down, and Darius Cole, whether ready or not, would be standing in its path. Monday morning in Brookdale broke gray and restless. The crowds at the square had thinned overnight, but the city was still humming. Storefronts displayed murals of lanterns, while newspapers carried photos of Darius with the little girl who handed him a flower. The caption read, "Strength without anger." Inside a cafe near City Hall, Amanda Torres typed furiously at her laptop while sipping burnt coffee. Her phone buzzed constantly with alerts. National outlets were asking for interviews. Foreign networks wanted commentaries. She rubbed her tired eyes. Rivera entered, scanning the cafe before sliding into the seat across from her. "Any word on Kincaid?" she asked. Amanda shook her head. "Nothing. No one's seen him. No statements, no lawyers. Just silence." Rivera leaned forward, her voice low. "That's what worries me most." Across town, in a dingy motel room, Brent Kincaid stared at a wall covered in scattered headlines. Each one carried Darius's name, his face, his words. Kincaid had circled them with a marker, his handwriting jagged and angry. "Traitor, fraud, thief." He muttered under his breath as he paced. "They cheer him, they spit on me. I gave the city 20 years, and they erased it with one punch." His pistol lay on the table, gleaming under the weak light. He picked it up, weighed it in his hand, then set it down again. Sweat trickled down his temple. His reflection in the cracked mirror looked like a stranger, eyes hollow, jaw tight, bitterness etched deep. A knock rattled the door. Kincaid froze, then opened it a crack. It was Parker, the rookie. His expression was nervous, his voice shaky. "Brent, what are you doing, man? Everyone's talking. You've gotta—" "Get out," Kincaid snapped. "Listen," Parker pressed. "You don't have to go down like this. Face the charges, tell your side, but don't do anything stupid." Kincaid's eyes narrowed. "You already betrayed me in that testimony. Now you come here pretending to care?" Parker shook his head. "I came here because I do care. But if you keep spiraling, Brent, you're gonna drag us all down with you." The slam of the door cut him off. Parker stood in the hallway for a moment, fists clenched, then walked away. Inside, Kincaid's chest heaved. His hands shook as he whispered, "They all turned on me. Even him. Even the rook." By noon, Brookdale Square filled again. This time, veterans led a march, their boots pounding in unison. Families followed, holding banners, their chants echoing against brick walls. Amanda reported live, her voice carrying over the noise. Today, veterans from across the state have joined Brookdale's citizens in demanding accountability. Their message is clear: service deserves dignity. The camera panned to Darius, walking with the crowd. He wore no uniform, only a plain shirt, but the respect around him was palpable. Children reached for his hands, veterans saluted as he passed, and Rivera shadowed him like a shield. When a reporter shouted a question about Kincaid, Darius stopped. His answer was steady, deliberate. "This isn't about one man. It's about whether a city can decide respect belongs to everyone. That's what matters." The crowd roared, chants swelling louder. "Respect first! Respect first!" From a rooftop 2 blocks away, Kincaid watched through binoculars. His jaw clenched, his breath shallow. The sight of Darius leading the march made his hands shake with rage. "They treat him like a general," he muttered. "While I'm the ghost." He lowered the binoculars, his eyes burning. "They'll see me again. I'll make sure of it." His phone buzzed. A text from his union rep. "Brent, we need to meet. Stop hiding." He ignored it, shoving the phone in his pocket. His hand brushed against the pistol. The weight was both a comfort and a curse. That night, City Hall hosted an emergency meeting. Councilwoman Ortiz slammed her hand on the table. "We need to protect Cole. Kincaid's silence is the biggest danger we face." The mayor sighed, looking aged beyond his years. "We've assigned protection. Rivera and her unit are with him constantly." Ortiz shook her head. "That won't stop a man who's desperate. We need to move faster, push this trial forward, make an example. Otherwise, we're inviting chaos." Her words lingered like a warning. Back at the motel, Kincaid scribbled in a notebook, his handwriting frantic. "They want me erased. They want him remembered. No, they'll remember me." He tore the page out, crumpled it, and threw it across the room. His eyes flicked to the pistol again. Then, with a sudden clarity, he whispered, "It's time." He packed a small bag, extra ammo, gloves, a cap pulled low. He tucked the pistol into a holster beneath his jacket. When he stepped into the night, the city lights glowed in the distance, and the chants from the square still carried faintly on the wind. Kincaid clenched his jaw. Tomorrow, they'll hear my name again. Tuesday morning in Brookdale was strangely quiet. After days of chants, marches, and lanterns, the city seemed to hold its breath. But beneath the calm, tension churned like a storm offshore. Amanda Torres sat in the newsroom, reviewing overnight footage. Her producer leaned over her shoulder. "It's almost eerie," he said. "The crowds are thinner, but the fear is heavier. People are whispering about Kincaid." Amanda nodded grimly. "Silence isn't peace, it's pressure." She drafted her opening line for the evening broadcast. Brookdale braces for what comes next. In his small apartment above a corner store, Darius Cole buttoned his shirt slowly. Rivera stood by the window, eyes scanning the street below. Evelyn fussed with his collar, trying to keep her hand steady. "You don't have to go out again today," she said softly. Darius looked at her, voice calm. "Hiding won't fix anything. People are still waiting in the square. If I don't stand with them, I'll lose them." Rivera checked her watch. "The car's waiting, we'll keep it tight." Evelyn's eyes shone with worry. "Just come back safe." Darius squeezed her hand before stepping toward the door. "I'll stand tall, Mom. That's all I can promise." Meanwhile, Brent Kincaid sat in his car a block from Brookdale Square. He wore a dark cap pulled low, a jacket zipped to his neck, the pistol pressed heavy against his ribs. His hands gripped the wheel, knuckles pale. He muttered under his breath, voice rough. "They cheer him like he's a saint, while I rot, while my name is spit on." Through the windshield, he could see the first groups gathering, families with signs, veterans marching in step, kids carrying flowers. The sound of distant chants carried to him, stabbing at his pride. "They'll know me again," he whispered. "They'll have to." He stepped out of the car, blending into the early crowd. At City Hall, Councilwoman Ortiz cornered the mayor. "We can't stall any longer. Kincaid's silence is dangerous. We need eyes everywhere." The mayor rubbed his temple. "We've already got Rivera's unit on Cole." Ortiz's reply was sharp. "That's not enough. Kincaid isn't rational anymore. He's desperate. Desperate men make reckless choices." Her words landed like a prophecy. By midday, Brookdale Square was alive again. Music drifted from speakers, children's laughter mingled with chants, and candles flickered in the daylight. Darius stepped onto the platform, Rivera close at his side, her eyes constantly scanning. Amanda narrated live. For the third day in a row, Darius Cole is here in Brookdale Square, standing before his city. Each day his presence grows heavier, not just as a victim, but as a leader. The crowd erupted as Darius raised a hand. His voice carried steady. "We've come far, but respect is not a destination. It's a choice, every day. And today, we choose it again." The chant swelled. "Respect first! Respect first!" From the edge of the square, Kincaid pushed through the crowd, his cap pulled low. Sweat beaded on his temple, though the day was cool. He scanned the stage, his eyes locking on Darius. "There he is," he muttered. "The saint, the hero, the thief of my life." His hand brushed against the pistol under his jacket. His breathing quickened. But just as he steadied himself, a child stumbled into him, spilling juice across his sleeve. Kincaid froze, startled. The child's mother apologized quickly, pulling her daughter away. Kincaid's heart pounded. For a moment, the reality of where he stood, surrounded by families, children, veterans, clashed with the dark spiral in his mind. His grip loosened on the weapon. "Not here," he whispered. "Not yet." He melted back into the crowd, his jaw tight, his mind spinning. That evening, Rivera debriefed with Ortiz over the phone. "I don't like it," she admitted. "I can feel something shifting. The square's energy is off. People are hopeful, but there's tension, like they're bracing for something." Ortiz's voice was firm. "Stay sharp. If Kincaid's out there, he won't stay in the shadows forever." Rivera glanced at Darius, who sat quietly signing a child's poster. "He won't catch us sleeping," she said. But even as she spoke, unease prickled her skin. Across town, Kincaid returned to his motel. He tossed his jacket onto the bed, his sleeves still damp from the spilled juice. He stared at the pistol on the table, chest heaving. "I could have done it," he growled. "I should have done it." But then the image of the child flashed in his mind, the wide eyes, the innocence. His fists clenched. He slammed the table, shouting into the silence, "Tomorrow, tomorrow, no matter what." Back in the square, lanterns floated upward once more, painting the sky with fragile light. Darius stood beside Rivera, his gaze steady but heavy. They're looking to you more every day, Rivera said quietly. Darius exhaled. Then I'll keep standing, until they don't need me anymore. The chants rose again. Stand tall, stand tall. But in the shadows, Brent Kincaid sharpened his resolve. The storm was closer now. Wednesday morning in Brookdale arrived with a deceptive calm. The city looked almost normal. Buses ran, shops opened, children walked to school, but under the surface, everyone felt it. Rumors spread like wildfire. Brent Kincaid was back in the city. No one knew where, no one knew when, but the whispers tightened every breath. At the precinct, Lieutenant Harris called Rivera in for a briefing. The room smelled of burnt coffee and old paperwork. We've had unconfirmed sightings, Harris said, sliding a folder across the table. Gas stations, alleys, side streets, nothing solid, but the man's desperate. He won't hide forever. Rivera scanned the file, her jaw tight. He's circling, testing the edges. Harris nodded. And he's armed. We found his motel trashed. He's moving with intent now. Watch Cole like a hawk. Rivera stood, her voice clipped. I already am. Meanwhile, Darius sat at the kitchen table in his mother's small apartment. Evelyn poured him coffee, her hands steady despite the worry etched in her face. You could leave, you know, she said softly. Go to your brother's place out of state. Stay until this is over. Darius shook his head. Running makes me guilty of something I didn't do. I won't let him chase me into hiding. Evelyn studied him, her eyes shining with both pride and fear. You sound just like your father. Rivera entered, nodding briskly. Car's ready. The square's already filling. Darius finished his coffee in one swallow, stood and kissed his mother's forehead. I'll stand tall. Always. By late morning, Brookdale Square pulsed with life. Veterans in uniform lined the steps of City Hall. Musicians played drums that echoed like steady heartbeats. Families carried signs painted overnight. Justice's strength and We March with Cole. Amanda Torres stood before the cameras, her voice steady but edged with tension. For the 5th day in a row, Brookdale Square is alive with chants and calls for justice, but beneath the music and speeches, a shadow lingers. Officer Brent Kincaid remains missing, and sources confirm his weapon has not been recovered. The camera panned over the crowd, faces hopeful but eyes darting, watchful. From a rooftop across the street, Kincaid watched through binoculars. His breath fogged against the cold glass. Below, Darius stood surrounded by veterans and children, his calm presence commanding the square. Kincaid muttered, Look at them, worshipping him like he's untouchable. He lowered the binoculars, his hand brushing the pistol holstered beneath his jacket. His chest heaved with a mix of rage and adrenaline. This ends today, he whispered. At City Hall, Councilwoman Ortiz addressed the press. Brookdale cannot afford another act of violence. We are working closely with federal agencies to ensure safety. But let me be clear, accountability will not be silenced by fear. Her words rippled across news feeds, but they did little to calm the unease. Back in the square, Darius stepped onto the platform. Rivera flanked his left, another soldier on his right. Amanda's cameras locked on him, broadcasting live. My city, Darius began, his voice steady. We've stood together these past days, not because of one punch, but because of what it revealed. Respect is not optional. Dignity is not negotiable. The crowd erupted in chants. Respect first! Respect first! Darius raised his hand. The chants softened. I am no saint, I am no hero. I am simply one man who chose not to fight back. But we, together, we are stronger than hate. The square thundered with applause. From the rooftop, Kincaid steadied his breath. He unholstered his weapon, crouched low, and aimed through the binoculars. His finger hovered near the trigger. They'll remember me, he muttered. Not him, me. But as he steadied the weapon, a sudden movement caught his eye. Two soldiers breaking formation below, scanning rooftops. One pointed upward. Kincaid's chest seized. He ducked low, heart hammering. Voices rose on radios below, shouts cutting through the chants. Rooftop! East corner! Rivera's head snapped up. Her hand shot to her earpiece. Cole, down! Now! Chaos rippled through the square. Families screamed, veterans moved to shield children, and the chants turned into gasps. Amanda's camera swung wildly, catching only fragments, the soldiers rushing the stairs, Rivera pulling Darius behind cover, and lanterns tumbling from startled hands. Kincaid scrambled, his boots slipping against gravel. Not like this, he hissed. Not yet. He bolted across the rooftop, shoving his pistol back into his jacket. Sirens wailed below as officers converged. For a moment, the entire city seemed to hold its breath. Minutes later, Rivera escorted Darius into a secure vehicle, her jaw set. "He's here. He's hunting you." Darius, breathing hard, steadied himself. "Then we stand taller. We don't run." Rivera stared at him, both frustrated and awed. "You don't understand. He's not just angry anymore. He's desperate. Desperate men don't miss." Darius met her gaze firmly. "Then we make sure he doesn't get the chance." On the rooftop, Kincaid vanished into the shadows, his plan unraveling but his obsession burning hotter. He whispered into the wind as sirens closed in. "Tomorrow. If not today, then tomorrow. But he will fall." Brookdale woke to a different city on Thursday morning. The attempted rooftop attack had rattled everyone. News stations replayed shaky footage from Amanda Torres's camera, soldiers pointing to the skyline, Rivera dragging Darius behind cover, families screaming. The caption screamed across the screen, "Near miss in Brookdale." City Hall declared an immediate lockdown around Brookdale Square. Streets were barricaded, checkpoints established, and federal agents in dark suits patrolled alongside local officers. Helicopters thudded overhead like a constant reminder that danger hadn't passed. Amanda reported live outside City Hall. Brookdale has transformed overnight. What was once a space for unity now feels like a fortress. Sources confirm that Officer Brent Kincaid evaded capture after being spotted with a firearm on a nearby rooftop. The manhunt intensifies. In a secure safe house on the city's edge, Darius sat with Rivera and his mother. The blinds were drawn, the hum of radios constant. Evelyn's hands trembled as she poured coffee. "You could have been killed," she whispered. Darius took her hand gently. "But I wasn't. And hiding now would undo everything we've stood for." Rivera leaned against the wall, her arms crossed. "He's escalating. Yesterday was proof. We've got federal agents crawling all over the city, but he's slippery, knows how to move without leaving footprints." Darius looked at her, his voice firm. "So he's out there watching me. Let him watch. I won't live in fear." Rivera shook her head. "This isn't just about you anymore. He's turned into a symbol too, one of bitterness, and symbols can be deadly when they think they've got nothing to lose." Meanwhile, Kincaid sat in the back of a dingy diner, a newspaper spread before him. The front page carried his blurred silhouette on the rooftop, the headline branding him as a fugitive. He traced the photo with his finger, whispering, "They'll call me villain until I prove otherwise." His pistol rested in his lap beneath the table, covered by a napkin. His food sat untouched. Each time the bell above the door jingled, his eyes flicked upward, ready to strike or flee. He muttered, "They can lock down the city, they can flood the streets with soldiers, but I'll still find him." At City Hall, Councilwoman Ortiz pressed federal officials during a tense briefing. "We cannot underestimate Kincaid. He's not hiding because he's afraid. He's hiding because he's planning. Every day he's free, this city teeters closer to violence." An FBI agent replied coolly, "We're monitoring every exit, every bus, every motel. He won't slip out." Ortiz's voice was sharp. "I don't care if he leaves. I care if he pulls that trigger before you catch him." That evening, Amanda went live again, her voice grave. "The lanterns that once lit the Brookdale sky are gone tonight. Fear has dimmed them. But people still gather, even in lockdown. They whisper prayers, they sing quietly, they write Cole's words across sidewalks in chalk. The city refuses to be silenced." Her camera panned across a smaller, tighter crowd in the square. Veterans formed a protective circle around families. Children clutched candles, their flames flickering against the barricades. Inside the safe house, Darius watched the broadcast with clenched fists. "They're still out there. Even when it's dangerous, they're standing." Rivera turned sharply. "Don't even think about it." Darius looked at her. "How can I hide while they're risking themselves for me?" Rivera's eyes flashed. "Because you're the reason they're standing at all. You fall and the whole city collapses." Evelyn spoke softly but firmly. "She's right, Darius. This isn't just your fight anymore. It's theirs too. Don't take away their hope by being reckless." Darius lowered his head, torn between duty and caution. Across town, Kincaid moved through alleys, his cap low, his jacket zipped. Police checkpoints dotted the main roads, so he slipped through side streets, his every step deliberate. From a shadowed alley, he looked toward Brookdale Square, the glow of candles visible even through barricades. His lips curled into a bitter smile. They still gather. They still chant. All for him. He rested a hand on his pistol, whispering, "One shot and it all unravels." But a sudden patrol passed, flashlights slicing through the dark. Kincaid melted deeper into the shadows, his heart hammering, his fury sharpening. Back at the safe house, Rivera double-checked the locks before sitting across from Darius. "He won't stop. You know that, right?" Darius nodded slowly. "Then neither will I." Rivera frowned. "You can't keep meeting this with speeches alone. At some point, he's going to force a confrontation." Darius looked her dead in the eye. "Then I'll confront him, but I won't become him." That night, Amanda closed her broadcast with a line that captured the city's tension perfectly. Brookdale waits. One man hides with his rage, another stands with his dignity, and a city holds its breath between them. Something has to break. The camera lingered on the square, candles flickering against steel barricades. And in the shadows, Brent Kincaid smiled grimly, whispering to himself, "Tomorrow." Friday dawned gray and heavy, as if the sky itself mirrored Brookdale's dread. Helicopters still droned overhead, and checkpoints ringed the square, but the city's nerves were stretched thin. Every corner conversation returned to one question: where is Kincaid? At the safe house, Rivera spread a city map across the table. Red X's marked the checkpoints, blue circles highlighted possible blind spots. She tapped one intersection hard enough to rattle the pens. "If he tries to breach the square, this is where he'll do it. It's the weakest link." Darius studied the map. His calm presence filled the room, but tension flickered in his eyes. "So we strengthen it." Rivera shot him a look. "You're not going anywhere near it." "I didn't say I was," he replied evenly. "But you know as well as I do, he's not aiming for barricades. He's aiming for me." Evelyn, who'd been quietly folding laundry at the corner, spoke without looking up. "Then he'll find a man ready, not running." Rivera exhaled, muttering, "You Coles are going to be the death of me." Across town, Kincaid adjusted the strap of his jacket as he slipped down an alley. The pistol pressed against his ribs like a brand. He'd spent the night memorizing patrol patterns, listening to radios stolen from a squad car. He knew when they shifted, when the streets were thin. He crouched near the intersection Rivera had circled hours earlier, though he didn't know it. His lips curled into a bitter smile. "Too busy watching the square to see the cracks," he muttered. A family passed nearby, hurrying to the safety of the square. The child's laughter drifted past him, pure and unguarded. For a fleeting second, Kincaid's grip loosened on the pistol. But just as quickly, rage returned. "They don't laugh for me," he growled. "They laugh for him." By noon, the square pulsed with defiance. Despite the lockdown, people gathered again. Smaller crowds, tighter circles, but voices just as loud. Veterans stood at the barricades, their uniforms pressed, their salutes sharp. Children chalked "Stand Tall" across the pavement in bright colors. Amanda's broadcast captured the determination. Brookdale refuses to bow to fear. Even with an armed fugitive at large, citizens stand shoulder to shoulder, their chants echoing through barricaded streets. The camera panned to Darius. Stepping onto the platform once more, Rivera glued to his side. "My city," Darius began, his voice steady despite the weight pressing down on him. "We don't silence fear by hiding. We silence it by standing. And today, once again, we stand tall." The square thundered. "Stand tall! Stand tall!" 2 blocks away, Kincaid made his move. He slipped through the alley, his steps silent, his breathing controlled. A patrol passed. He pressed himself against a dumpster until their lights faded. He moved again, cutting closer to the square. The sound of chants carried louder now, vibrating in his chest. He muttered, "They think he's invincible. Let's see how invincible he looks when he falls." He reached the barricade. Only 2 officers manned it, distracted by radio chatter. Kincaid waited, patient like a predator in tall grass. When their backs turned, he ducked low, sliding under the metal bar with the ease of a man who'd spent years on the force. Now he was inside. On stage, Rivera's earpiece crackled. "We've got movement near the east side. Possible breach." Her hand shot to her holster. She scanned the crowd, eyes sharp. "Cole, stay down!" Darius didn't flinch. "If he's here, this is where I need to be." Rivera cursed under her breath, signaling to 2 soldiers nearby. "Sweep the east, now!" Amanda's camera caught the shift, her voice rising. "Something's happening. Security is tightening. Soldiers are moving into position." The crowd murmured nervously, sensing the change. Kincaid wove through the people, his cap low, his hand brushing the pistol beneath his jacket. He could see the platform now. Darius stood tall, lantern light flickering against his face. "There he is," Kincaid hissed. "The thief, the fraud, the man they gave my life to." He pushed forward, closer, every step fueled by bitterness. But just as he reached the front line of the crowd, a child stumbled into him again, clutching a small lantern. The boy looked up, eyes wide and innocent. "Mister, you dropped something?" Kincaid froze, his chest seizing. The lantern's glow reflected in the boy's gaze, soft and unguarded. For one moment, the weight of what he was about to do crashed over him. But rage burned hotter. He shoved past, the boy stumbling into the arms of his mother. Rivera saw the movement, her instincts flaring. She drew her weapon, shouting, "Kincaid, don't move!" The square erupted in chaos. Families screamed, soldiers surged forward, and Amanda's camera shook violently as she narrated through the noise. "Shots fired! Security has identified Kincaid! This is the confrontation Brookdale has feared!" Kincaid's pistol cleared his jacket, his hand shaking but his eyes locked on Darius. For the first time in days, he spoke loud enough for all to hear. "They erased me for you. Now they'll remember." The crowd scattered, lanterns crashing, chants breaking into cries. Soldiers closed in, and Darius stood tall, unflinching, staring down the man who'd haunted the city. The square froze in a single heartbeat. Shouts and chants gave way to screams and silence as Brent Kincaid leveled his pistol at Darius Cole. The once celebratory air turned heavy, suffocating. The flicker of lanterns replaced by the gleam of steel in trembling hands. Rivera's voice cut through the chaos. "Kincaid, drop it!" She crouched low, her weapon drawn, soldiers flanking her with rifles ready. Their red laser sights pinned him, yet he stood unmoving, eyes wild, chest heaving. Darius remained on the platform, unflinching. He could feel every gaze, every prayer in the square fixed on him, but his eyes never left Kincaid's. "You ruined me!" Kincaid's voice cracked, loud enough for the crowd to hear. 20 years in this city, 20 years of loyalty, and you took it all with your silence, your quiet dignity. He spat the last words like poison. Darius's voice was calm, even, carrying across the square without the aid of a microphone. "I didn't take anything from you, Brent. You gave it away when you chose hate over respect." The words seemed to slice through the tension. The crowd gasped. Even Amanda, filming live, whispered into her mic, "He's speaking directly to him." Kincaid's hand shook violently, the barrel wavering. "You think you're better than me? You think standing still makes you stronger?" Rivera inched closer, her tone sharp. "Brent, listen to me. This isn't the way. Put it down before someone dies." But Kincaid's eyes locked only on Darius, as though Rivera and the soldiers were ghosts. At the edge of the square, a child began to cry, her voice piercing the silence. Veterans closed ranks, shielding families, their uniforms stiff under the glow of floodlights. One man, decorated with medals, raised his voice. "You're pointing that gun at all of us, officer," he shouted. "At every soldier who came home to be spat on instead of saluted." The words rippled through the crowd. Chants began to rise again, shaky but growing. "Stand tall! Stand tall!" Kincaid flinched at the sound, his jaw clenching. "Shut up!" he barked, waving the pistol. "All of you, shut up!" But the chants only grew louder. Amanda's voice quivered as she narrated live. "The crowd is pushing back, not with violence but with voices. They're chanting again, drowning out Kincaid's rage with Cole's message." Rivera seized the moment, inching closer. "Brent, look around. You're outnumbered, outgunned. And if you pull that trigger, you'll be remembered for nothing but hate." Kincaid's lip curled, but his arm wavered. Sweat trickled down his temple. Darius stepped forward, off the platform, moving slowly into the open. Rivera hissed, "Cole, stop!" But he kept walking. "Brent," Darius said softly, his voice steady, "you don't have to go down this way. You still have a choice." For a split second, time seemed suspended. Kincaid's finger hovered over the trigger, his breaths ragged. Memories of his years in uniform flashed in his mind. The camaraderie, the pride, the slow corrosion of bitterness. "You don't know what it's like," he muttered, "to give everything and get nothing." Darius stopped a few feet away, his hands visible, palms open. "I know exactly what it's like, but bitterness doesn't heal it. Respect does. And you can still choose it right now." The chant swelled, filling the square like thunder. "Respect first! Respect first!" Kincaid's knees buckled slightly, His hand trembled harder, the pistol swaying. Rivera steadied her aim, ready to fire if necessary. Suddenly, a veteran stepped forward from the crowd, his voice booming. "Kincaid, I served under your badge once. You had honor then. Don't throw it away here." The words cracked something in Kincaid. His eyes flicked from the veteran to Darius, then to the crowd chanting his name. His shoulders sagged as if years of weight pressed down at once. The pistol slipped from his hand, clattering against the pavement. The sound echoed louder than a gunshot. Rivera and two soldiers rushed forward, tackling him to the ground. The crowd erupted, not in fear, but in triumphant relief. Families wept, children clung to parents, veterans saluted Darius where he stood. Amanda's voice shook with emotion as she broadcast live. "It's over, Kincaid is down, and Darius Cole stood tall." As officers cuffed Kincaid, he muttered weakly, "They'll forget me, they'll forget everything." Darius knelt beside him, meeting his broken gaze. "Not forgotten, Brent, but remembered for what you chose. That was always in your hands." Rivera pulled Darius back, guiding him to the platform once more. The chants roared louder than ever, lanterns rising again into the night sky. Darius looked out at his city, voice firm. "Tonight, Brookdale chose respect. Tonight, we stood tall together." The roar shook the square, not with violence but with unity. Brookdale woke to headlines screaming across every newsstand. "Standoff in the square ends without bloodshed." Photos of Brent Kincaid pinned to the pavement, his pistol lying just feet away, dominated the front pages. But it was Darius Cole's steady figure, unarmed, hands open, that captured hearts. Amanda Torres's broadcast replayed endlessly. Clips of her voice, choked with emotion, and Darius Cole stood tall, were looped on every major network. Social media erupted with clips of the chants, lanterns, and the moment the pistol clattered to the ground. #Stand Tall trended worldwide. At City Hall, Councilwoman Ortiz addressed the press, her tone resolute. Brookdale saw hate at its doorstep and chose dignity instead. "Let this be a message. Our city will not bow to fear." Behind her, Darius stood quietly, flanked by Rivera and veterans. He said nothing, but his presence spoke volumes. In a cell beneath the courthouse, Brent Kincaid sat slumped, his head in his hands. His uniform was gone, replaced by an orange jumpsuit. The same hands that once held authority now clutched steel bars. His lawyer sat across from him. "You're facing a storm, Brent. Attempted murder, weapons charges, endangering the public. It's not looking good." Kincaid didn't respond. His eyes were hollow, his voice a whisper. "They'll remember him, not me. Always him." The lawyer sighed, closing his folder. "That's because he gave them something to remember." Kincaid pressed his forehead to the cold bars, the weight of bitterness finally crushing him. Back in the square, families gathered again, not in fear, but in celebration. Children drew chalk murals of Darius standing tall, veterans saluted, and lanterns floated higher than ever. The barricades remained, but they no longer felt like walls. They felt like shields of solidarity. Amanda interviewed citizens one by one. A mother holding her daughter said, "I was here when he faced that gun. He didn't flinch. That strength my daughter will never forget." A veteran added, "He reminded us what service really means. Not uniforms, not medals, but standing tall when it counts." The voices poured in, weaving a story bigger than one man. At the safe house that evening, Evelyn cooked a quiet dinner for her son. Rivera sat across from Darius, still sharp-eyed, though exhaustion hung from her shoulders. "You realize you're not just a man anymore, right?" she said. "You've become the spine of this city." Darius shook his head slowly. "I'm no hero, Rivera. I just didn't move." She leaned forward, her tone firm. "That's what makes you one. You didn't move when it mattered." Evelyn set the plates down gently. "Your father would have been proud." For a rare moment, Darius smiled, a soft warmth breaking through his steady armor. Meanwhile, Amanda prepped her nightly broadcast. The studio lights burned bright, the teleprompter scrolled slowly. But she didn't need a script tonight. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady, eyes locked on the camera. "In Brookdale, we've seen how quickly violence can spread, but tonight, we've also seen how dignity can stop it in its tracks. One man stood tall, and in doing so, he gave his city a spine. Darius Cole reminded us that respect is stronger than fear." She paused, letting the words sink in before closing with a line that spread far beyond the city. Sometimes strength is not in the punch you throw, but in the stand you take. Her words went viral, quoted in editorials and classrooms across the nation. Across the country, protests erupted in solidarity. Murals of Darius appeared in cities he had never visited. Veterans held marches under banners reading, "Respect First." And in neighborhoods where fear once silenced voices, chants of "Stand Tall" rang out. Brookdale's story had become America's story. Late that night, Darius stood at his window, watching lanterns rise once more into the dark sky. Rivera approached quietly. "You've changed the city forever," she said. Darius shook his head, his eyes on the drifting lights. "The city changed itself. I just happened to be standing there." Rivera studied him, then finally allowed herself a small smile. "And you'll keep standing. That's who you are." The lanterns floated higher, tiny stars carrying hope. For the first time in days, Brookdale slept without fear. Saturday morning in Brookdale carried a different rhythm. The square, once barricaded and tense, now thrummed with a quiet pride. Families arrived early, setting flowers at the base of the platform where Darius Cole had stood unflinching. Veterans straightened their uniforms, children carried chalk to refresh fading words across the pavement. "Stand tall." News crews lined the sidewalks, their cameras trained not on fear this time, but on celebration. Amanda Torres stood at the front, her microphone steady. Today marks a turning point. What began with a punch, a silence, and a gun has become a movement. Brookdale has chosen dignity. And today it chooses to honor the man at its heart. Inside City Hall, Darius adjusted his plain jacket. Evelyn fussed with his collar one last time, her touch gentle. "You never asked for this, but it found you anyway," she said softly. Darius smiled faintly. "I didn't stand for glory, Mom. I stood because I couldn't move any other way." Rivera appeared at the door, crisp and watchful as ever. "It's time." Together they walked toward the square. The crowd erupted as Darius appeared. Chants rose like a tide, not chaotic but unified. "Respect first, stand tall." Veterans saluted, families raised lanterns in the daylight, and Amanda's voice narrated Bikia or Sasia, her tone reverent. Darius Cole enters the square, not as a victim, not even as a hero, but as a man who gave his city back its voice. On the platform, Councilwoman Ortiz addressed the crowd. "We gather not to erase what happened, but to mark what we've become because of it. Brookdale is no longer a city divided by fear. It is a city united by dignity." She turned, gesturing for Darius to step forward. The roar swelled. Darius faced the crowd, the same steady calm that had carried him through the storm now radiating outward. His voice carried without strain. "My city," he began. "We've been through nights heavy with fear and days loud with rage. But together, we stood taller than both. Respect is not a gift handed down. It is a choice we made, again and again." He paused, scanning the faces. Children, veterans, parents, elders. Brent Kincaid tried to break that choice. But what happened? You raised your voices higher. You lit your lanterns brighter. You showed him and the world that hate cannot silence a people who stand tall. The chants swelled again, vibrating the very ground beneath their feet. At the back of the crowd, Amanda wiped a tear as she whispered into her mic, "The square has become something more than a gathering place. It is sacred ground now." Rivera, watching from the side, felt a rare tightness in her throat. She had been prepared for bullets, for chaos, for loss. She hadn't been prepared for this. Peace forged from unity. Meanwhile, in his cell, Brent Kincaid watched the broadcast on a small wall-mounted TV. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. Every chant, every cheer felt like a hammer pounding his ribs. The guard passing by muttered, "You could have been part of this city's healing. Instead, you'll be remembered for what you tried to destroy." Kincaid turned away from the screen, burying his head in his hands. Back in the square, Ortiz raised her hand. "Today, Brookdale dedicates this space to every voice once silenced, every soldier disrespected, every citizen overlooked, and to Darius Cole, who reminded us what strength truly means." A bronze plaque was unveiled at the base of the platform. The inscription read, "Strength is not in the fist you throw, but in the stand you take." The crowd erupted. Lanterns were released into the afternoon sky, their flames glowing against the pale blue, symbols of hope rising higher than fear ever could. Amanda closed her broadcast with words that would echo far beyond Brookdale. "The story of Darius Cole is no longer just this city's. It belongs to all of us. In every town, every street, every place where dignity is threatened, we can look to Brookdale and remember, standing tall is the greatest act of defiance. Her words spread like wildfire, quoted in newspapers, replayed on national broadcasts, painted onto murals. As dusk settled, Darius walked through the square with Rivera and Evelyn at his side. Children ran to hug him, veterans clasped his hand, and strangers whispered thanks. He paused by the plaque, reading the inscription once more. Evelyn slipped her arm through his. "Your father would have said the same thing." Darius smiled faintly. "Then maybe I just carried his stand forward." Rivera, standing behind them, allowed herself a rare smile, and gave a whole city the backbone it needed. Above them, the last lantern drifted into the darkening sky, carrying Brookdale's promise: respect first, stand tall, dignity for all.